You might have watched at least one Reddit stories video in your life because they're literally everywhere, but nobody is actually talking about threads, confessions. If you don't know about threads, you might be living under a rock or something, but it's a platform launched by Meta as a competitor to X or Twitter. I found some of the stories and oh boy, they were super interesting. And guess what? I am reading out some of them for you. You can thank me in the comments. And oh, you see the boring, ultra noob gameplay in the background? Yep, that's mine, and I know it sucks. That's because I have never Minecrafted before. It's my first time. This video is more about listening than watching, but I should give you something to look at and hook you up, right? You can listen to these stories and fall asleep to my voice. And if you want to share your stories or experiences, you can find me in the description below. So yeah, enough of the app. Let's get started. The first story is from Amy, and she writes, "My first boyfriend was when I was 13. He was a bad boy. He smoked cigarettes. He gave me a bracelet that he stole. We would talk on the phone for hours and hold hands at the skating rink. One day I gave the bracelet to his best friend and said to tell him I wanted to break up. Fast forward 30 years. I saw him on FB and sent a friend request. He was kinda cute. I messaged him about how he was my first boyfriend. He didn't remember, lol. But then he asked me if I wanted to go to dinner. I said yes and was thinking about how cool it would be if I ended up back together with my very first boyfriend. He came to pick me up. His car looked like it had duct tape holding it together, but he said his truck was in the shop and this was his shop car. He was super skinny, but he was also tall. Not a big deal. I was pretty skinny also. We took my car to dinner. He told me about his son and he seemed like a great dad. Went back to my house and made plans to hang out the next evening. He comes over the next day and we talk about old times in the 80s. We're getting along great. I run 2 houses down to my mom's to pick up my son. I tell my mom how crazy it would be if I ended up marrying my very first boyfriend. Back at my house, we make plans to hang out again in a few days. Next morning, I wake up and start my day. I grab my purse and go to take my meds. My bottle of Vyvanse that I had just filled has only 3 capsules. The Vyvanse that I needed because I have MS, and without it, I can't stay awake and can't function. Tweaker McSkinny stole my meds. I was livid. And why leave 3 pills? Just take the whole bottle. Then try to convince me that I lost it or something. So then he texts me and asks how I am. I tell him that I know what he did. His skinny ass has the nerve to act dumb. I tell him that he can explain to the officer that'll soon be knocking at his door how my Vyvanse disappeared from my purse while I was 2 doors down at my mom's and he was the only person in my house. He freaks out and begs me not to call the cops. Starts apologizing and says he'll return it in my mailbox in a few hours. Of course he doesn't return anything. He just blocks my number and deletes his FB. I didn't call the cops, but I should have. Lesson learned. Never trust a 40-something-year-old man with a duct-taped car who seems just a bit too skinny. And that's the story of the first person I dated and the last person I dated. Story 2. My coworker thought it would be funny to send a fake resignation email from my computer while I was in the bathroom. I came back to my desk and saw 3 missed calls from my manager. Then HR messaged me. "Can you come to meeting room 2 immediately?" I looked at my coworker and he was trying not to laugh. "What did you do?" "Nothing. Just go." I walked into the meeting room and my manager was sitting there with someone from HR. My manager said, "We just received your resignation. I'm surprised you didn't speak to me first." I froze. "My what?" She turned her laptop toward me. There was an email from my account saying I was resigning effective immediately because I'd found a company that actually values its employees. My stomach dropped. I did not send that. My manager looked confused. HR asked, "Does anyone else have access to your computer?" That's when I realized. I walked back to the office and said, "Tell them." My coworker started laughing. "It was a joke! Relax! I thought everyone would know it was fake." Nobody laughed. My manager asked him to come into the meeting room. 20 minutes later, he came out looking completely different. Apparently, HR didn't find it funny that he'd accessed my work email and impersonated me. By the end of the day, his computer had been taken away and he'd been suspended pending an investigation. He texted me that evening. "I hope you're happy. You could have just told them it was a prank." I replied, "I did tell them." He said, "You didn't have to make it such a big deal." Now half the office thinks HR overreacted because it was obviously a joke. The other half says sending a resignation email from someone else's account isn't a prank, and somehow he's still blaming me. Third story. My sister opened her birthday present in front of everyone and smiled. It was an electric pressure cooker. My mom said excitedly, "Now you'll be able to make dinner for the kids even faster." She thanked everyone, set the box aside, and kept talking like nothing was wrong. Later, when we were in the kitchen, she looked at me and asked, "Do you think anyone remembers I like things besides taking care of the house?" At first, I didn't understand. Then she reminded me of her last few gifts. For Christmas, she got a set of towels. On Mother's Day, she got a vacuum cleaner. The year before, her husband gave her a sandwich maker because the old one had stopped working. She said, "Everyone else gets something for themselves. I always get something that helps me work harder." I asked what she had actually wanted. She smiled and said, "A perfume, a book, a purse, anything that doesn't come with another chore." The following week, she exchanged the pressure cooker for store credit and bought the perfume she had wanted for months. When the family found out, someone said, "But the pressure cooker would have been so useful?" She simply replied, "Useful? For who?" Do you also think it's strange how gifts for women so often end up being things for the house instead of for them? Okay, next one is from the real Chrissy. It's a short story, but she has posted an update. Let's hear it. The guy sitting next to me on this flight is reading 2K All a Mockingbird and keeps highlighting words, phrases, and sentences in the book. He also has his phone open to a dictionary website and is frequently using it to look up words. I'm a librarian and he is reading my favorite book of all time. And not just reading. He is fully engaged in interacting with the physical object and the work itself. And I'm not saying a word. I deserve a cookie. Update. He put the book away, so I took the opportunity to tell him how much I appreciated how he was engaged with my favorite book. He said he never read when he was younger, but is now in law school and surrounded by people who have read widely all their lives. So he's taking their suggestions on what to read when he needs a break from studying. Next is from Olivia Brooks. I ended my engagement just 10 weeks before the wedding, and almost everyone around me said I was making the biggest mistake of my life. No affair, no screaming matches, no financial disaster. It all came down to one moment I couldn't shake off. At the time, I was prepping for one of the most important professional exams of my life. I was studying every day from morning until late at night, barely sleeping, running on coffee, and constantly exhausted. My fiance knew how much pressure I was under. One evening, he came home, looked around the apartment, and sighed. He said, "The sink's full of dishes, the laundry's not folded, and there's nothing for dinner. You've been so wrapped up in your career that you've completely neglected this place. I'm going out to eat." Then he grabbed his keys and left. I just sat there staring at my notes. For a second, I honestly thought he'd come in to check how I was doing. I expected him to offer to order food, help out with chores, or even remind me to take a break. Instead, all he noticed was everything I hadn't done for him. That was the moment something shifted. I realized he didn't see us as a team. As long as I kept the apartment spotless and his routine effortless, everything was great. But the moment my own goals needed time and energy, I became a burden. The next day, I told him I couldn't marry him. Both our families tried to talk me out of it. Some said I was throwing away a great relationship over dirty dishes. Others insisted every couple goes through rough patches. But for me, it was never really about the dishes. It was about realizing that when I needed understanding the most, his first instinct wasn't to support me. It was to criticize what I hadn't done for him. I kept thinking that if this was how he treated me before we were even married, what would happen years down the line when things got even more complicated? So I'm curious, would you have brushed off that moment and gone ahead with the wedding? Or would it have changed everything for you too? Next is from Ethan Davis 1. When my 6-year-old daughter came home from school, she dropped her backpack and smiled. "Mummy, there's a sweet, intelligent, soft boy in my class." "Oh, really?" I asked, trying not to laugh. She nodded proudly. "He likes me. I played along." "How do you know?" "Because he always shares his crayons with me, saves me a seat, and says I'm kind." For the next few weeks, she kept mentioning him. She said he always reminded her to wash her hands before lunch and even helped other classmates pick up their books when they fell. One afternoon, I finally met the little boy during pickup. Just as my daughter described, he was polite, quiet, and greeted every parent with a smile. As we were leaving, my daughter whispered, "See? That's him." Before I could tease her, the little boy walked over with a folded piece of paper. My heart skipped a beat. He handed it to my daughter and said, "You forgot your math worksheet. I didn't want you to get in trouble." There was no love letter, no childish confession, just a classmate making sure his friend didn't miss her homework. That's when I realized what my daughter called liking her was simply genuine kindness, the pure, innocent kind that adults often forget exists. Sometimes, the sweetest stories aren't about romance at all, but about raising children who know how to care for others. Update. A few days went by, and my daughter stopped bringing up her little friend. I got worried and asked her about it, and she said he'd transferred to a new school, which really made her sad. So I took her over to his apartment complex, and she asked to bring him a teddy bear. It totally melted my heart that she wanted to give back all the sweetness he'd shown her. Do you guys think he loved it? Next is from Sophia Miller 02. My 12-year-old daughter is one of the most responsible kids around. She goes to school, plays volleyball, stays on top of her homework, and does chores that fit her age. Yet somehow my mother-in-law has decided she should be responsible for running our entire household. Every time she sees my husband, her own son, washing dishes, folding laundry, or doing any basic task, she starts complaining that those things are a wife's job and that my daughter should be helping me instead. Apparently, in her world, a grown man shouldn't have to clean up after himself, but a 12-year-old should already know how to serve everyone else. Last month, she crossed a line I couldn't overlook. My daughter had started her period that morning, barely slept because of the cramps, and asked to stay home just one day to rest. I said yes, because kids experience pain and exhaustion too. At 9 a.m., my mother-in-law walked in, saw her asleep in bed, and said, "That girl is nothing but a lazy bum." She said this about a child who was in pain, in her own bedroom, in the one place she should feel completely safe. I lost my cool. We had a massive argument, and I told her to leave right then. I also made it clear she wasn't welcome back if she kept talking to my daughter like that. My home isn't somewhere a child gets insulted, shamed, or taught that her worth hinges on how well she serves others. Be honest. Did I overreact, or would you have kicked her out too? My mother-in-law waited until everyone finished lunch. Then she looked at my husband and asked, "If I ever need to move in with you, who gets to decide?" My husband answered, "Both of us." She frowned and asked, "Both of us who?" He said, "My wife and me." I'll admit, the silence after that was awkward. She looked at me and said, "So my own son can't let his mother move into his house without asking your opinion?" I took a deep breath and replied, "He can, but it's my home too." She immediately said, "When I carried him for 9 months, nobody had to ask my permission." My husband tried to calm things down and said, "Mom, it's not about permission. It's a decision that changes everyone's life." She shook her head and said, "In my generation, children took their parents in without thinking twice. Now it feels like mothers have to pass an interview." My husband answered, "It's not an interview. It's about respecting your marriage." She looked at him for a few seconds and asked, "So getting married means a mother loses the place she's always had?" Nobody answered, because in one way or another, everyone seemed to have a point. That conversation still divides our family. What do you think? If a parent needs to move in after their child gets married, should that decision belong to the couple, or should the son or daughter be able to decide on their own? A few days after that conversation, I came across a chair with a table matching its theme. It immediately reminded me of everything that had happened at lunch. My first thought was that every home should have room for the people we love. But I also realized that for something like that to work, it can't be one person's decision. The people who already live there deserve to be heard too. Respect has to come before any decision. That's the only way a home can still feel like home. Next story is from Rachel Miller. A woman at my gym unplugged my treadmill while I was still running because she said I had been on it long enough. I nearly fell forward. "What are you doing?" She pointed at the treadmill. "You've been using this for 30 minutes. Other people are waiting." I looked around. There were at least 6 empty treadmills beside me. Nobody is waiting. She crossed her arms. "I am. I always use this one." I thought she was joking. "You unplugged a moving treadmill because you wanted this specific machine?" "It's my regular treadmill." I stepped off. "There's no such thing as your regular treadmill." That's when she got angry. "I've been coming here for 4 years. Everyone knows I use this one at 6 p.m. A guy nearby took his headphones off." She's actually serious. "She made me move last week, too." The woman turned to him. "Because you knew I was waiting." He laughed. "You weren't even in the gym yet." Now people were watching. I told her I still had 10 minutes left and plugged the treadmill back in. She immediately walked to the front desk. A staff member came over and asked what happened. Before I could speak, she said, "She's refusing to share the equipment." I said, "She unplugged the treadmill while I was running." The staff member's face changed. "You did what?" The woman tried explaining that everyone knew the treadmill was hers at 6 p.m. The employee told her she couldn't reserve equipment without an actual reservation system, and unplugging a machine while someone was using it was dangerous. She grabbed her bag and stormed out. I thought that was the end of it. The next evening, I arrived at 5:55. She was already walking on the same treadmill. As I passed, she smiled and said, "See? This is how you claim a machine." Now I'm wondering if I should deliberately use that treadmill every day or just accept that I've somehow entered a territorial dispute with a grown woman over gym equipment. The next day, I arrived at the same time and saw her with a luggage bag. I was afraid she might do something. Before she could say a word, the gym manager stepped in and made it crystal clear. No treadmill belongs to anyone, and turning off a machine while someone is using it is dangerous enough to get you kicked out. This time, she didn't argue. She simply took another treadmill. That's when I realized that some people don't just have a routine, they think they own the place. Yesterday, I stopped at the grocery store with my brother, and just as we were already in the checkout line, my sister-in-law texted him, "Babe, can you buy me some pads, please?" I ran out. He read the message, made a face, and replied, "You can buy them later." She explained that she had cramps, her period had started earlier than expected, and she didn't want to leave the house. My brother still said, "I don't know which ones to get. There are too many." She sent him a picture of the package and told him exactly where they were. Even then, he refused to leave the line. I'm gonna look ridiculous carrying that. I thought he was joking. I asked, "Embarrassed about what?" He answered quietly, "I don't know. Everyone will know they're for her." I just stared at him. We were buying toilet paper, gas medicine, and diaper rash cream, but apparently pads were where he drew the line for his masculinity. I stepped out of line, grabbed the package, and put it in the cart. He still said, "Now she's gonna get spoiled." When we got home, my sister-in-law thanked me and asked why he hadn't gone to get them. My brother replied, "Because that's women's stuff." She stayed quiet for a few seconds and then said, "Funny. When it comes to washing your clothes, sharing my bathroom, and sleeping with me, you don't think anything is too feminine." The room got awkward, but she didn't argue. She just took the package and went to the bedroom. On the way back, my brother said she had been rude over something stupid. But I kept thinking, was it really something stupid, or did it only seem small because he wasn't the one who needed it? Do you also think it's strange for a grown man to be embarrassed about buying pads? Or should everyone be responsible for handling their own personal things? Later, my sister-in-law walked out of the bedroom carrying a shopping bag and set it on the table. My brother thought it was just groceries until she pulled something out and asked if he'd be embarrassed by that too. Before he could answer, she showed me a panty. He immediately ran out of arguments and said she was overreacting. The truth is, the argument was never about pads. It was about care. Do you think he was embarrassed by the product or by taking responsibility? Okay, next one. I got laid off in January. Didn't tell my kids. Kept getting dressed every morning. Kept leaving at 7:40. Sat in the library all day applying for jobs. Came home at 6 like always. Couldn't say the words out loud. Not to them. Not to anyone. The librarian noticed me. Same table. Every day. Suit and tie in a public library. She never asked questions. Just started small things. Coffee left near my table. Someone ordered wrong. A printer code that never ran out. Job, fair flyers, placed, not handed. 3 months of this. Never a single conversation about it. One day she walked past and set down a sticky note. Conference room B is empty from 1 to 3 if you ever need a quiet place for phone interviews. It has a door. A door. She knew. She'd known the whole time. Nobody wears a tie to a library for 3 months. I got a job in April. Phone interview. Conference room B. Second thing I did was tell my kids everything. They cried. Then my daughter said, "Dad, we knew something was wrong. We just didn't know how to ask." Everyone knew. Everyone was waiting for me to let them. First thing I did was bring flowers to the library. The librarian took them and said, "Congratulations." I never doubted it. I said, "You never even knew my name." She said, "Didn't need it. I knew your table. Shame makes us hide in plain sight. Kindness sees us there anyway and leaves the coffee without a word." I think that's all for today. I will see you soon.